We will now have our meeting of the panel on welfare services. Before we start the meeting officially, on the 19th of January 2023, Dr. Hon NGAN Man-yu sent a letter in relation to the promotion of gerontechnology. Last Friday, Dr. Taek Chi-yun also suggested in a letter the discussion of measures in RCH in the fight against the epidemic. We will discuss with the LWB the agenda items. Next agenda items for discussion at the next meeting. In the first meeting of the panel, members were actively suggesting the items to be discussed. There were over 25 items. So, together with Reverend Peter Kuhn, we have sorted out different matters to be discussed with the administration. So, in chronological order, we have already listed the items to be discussed, so I will not waste further time. I'm now going to discuss matters which are more suitable to be discussed in other panels, which means that some matters will be more suitable to be discussed in other panels. So I will pursue this with Deputy Chair. Next month, we will have different discussion items. First, welfare and support services for persons with disabilities, PWD. With the administration, we will discuss SEN children and support rendered to parents. In March, we will discuss these items. Social welfare services are close to the heart of members. If there is anything cropping up, or if there is any ad hoc duties or ad hoc matters to be discussed, please raise the issues to the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair. It is clear that some matters might not be discussed in the next meeting. In point 16, I mentioned this last year, and I also wrote a letter. On RCH welfare support, children with special education needs, that has to do with community emotional support. Are we really going to put back this item? Can we not advance this item? I mentioned this at the start of last year, actually. First, we have established a schedule to stick to, and that also involves the different division of labor in different bureaus. So the matters to be discussed are still pending the reply of different bureaus. Whether we should discuss it in a joint panel or not, we will make announcements in due course. I understand that you are very much concerned. There are street sleepers, there are carers. Support policies are close to the heart of members. We hope that the administration will give us an actual date of reply. Otherwise, it's not meaningful. We will discuss with the government with Deputy Chair. Next. Proposal to appoint subcommittee on policy issues we received on the 17th of January from Mr. Stanley Lee, about setting up a subcommittee on promoting carer-centric policies under the panel. Mr. Stanley, 1 minute, please. I have prepared a material for members' reference. There were a lot of tragedies in relation to carers, especially for those who buckle under pressure. There were fatalities in society. There are hidden high-risk carers, and they are thick on the ground. So we need to see how we can support carers as soon as possible. So I wrote a letter to the chairman. I hope that in the panel or even in the Legislative Council, I hope I will be able to garner support from members to establish a subcommittee on promoting carer-centric policies. I will circulate the materials to different members. Some members have pressed the button. Please be succinct. And we will not deliberate policy issues. We simply want to know whether members will support the proposal made by Mr. Stanley. I speak in support of the proposal of Mr. Stanley. Next, Mr. Chen Puilang. I support as well. Mr. Chen Siu-chung, I support. Ms. Lillian Kwok, I support as well. There is indeed a genuine need. Any members against the proposal to establish the subcommittee under the panel? No objection. So we support this proposal. We have 18 panels. Some are established under the House Committee. There are a number of different suggestions lining up. There is a policy subcommittee on children care lining up. So with this one proposed by Mr. Stanley Lee, there are different lining up, and I hope that you will understand. Well, you will understand that we will have this subcommittee to be established soon. Now on the next agenda item.
Item 4, special scheme to import care workers for residential care homes. One paper was issued by the LWB, and the other paper is the background brief prepared by the Secretariat. Mr. Chris Sun, the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, would be the main official to answer us. Now, this item was supposed to have its discussion starting 11:55. Now we are losing 20 minutes already, so I think I have to extend the meeting for some time as well. So please press the button if you are interested. Mr. Christian, please walk us through the paper. The Secretariat will deal with the issue. Thank you. Mr. Christian, ready when you are. Please walk us through the paper. I know the time is tight. I will be very brief. I think we are all familiar with the details of the special scheme. The purpose of the special scheme is to address the long-term manpower shortage of residential care home in terms of carers. There is a special importation of labor scheme. The cap will be 7,000. As it is, there are already 4,000 imported carers working in Hong Kong. So the additional increase would be 3,000. Whether that would be sufficient to meet the manpower need in the next 3 years? Well, no. We expect an additional 1,000 carers who have to be hired locally. And the 1,500 estimation is on the low side. There will be natural attrition and there will be higher demands by private RCH. So we expect we will hire at least an additional 1,500 carers locally in the next 3 years. Now the ratio will be 1-to-1 for private RCH. That is for every imported carer hired and one local carer has to be hired. For subvented and contract RCH, the ratio is 2-to-1. That is 2 imported, workers to one local carer. We have consulted the trade concerning the proposal. They have given us their support, and we have also consulted the Labour Advisory Council. Well, we plan to implement the special scheme in full by middle of this year. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary, for your brief introduction. Now, there are 12 members who have requested to speak. These are the names: Mr. Michael Tian, Kenneth Leung, Kingsley Wong, Dr Ngan Man-yu, Mr. Michael Luk, Dr Dick Ji-yun, Chow Siu-chung, Chan Pui-leung, Ms. Judy Chan, Ms. Lillian Kwok, and then myself. 12 members, 4 minutes each. I think we can scrape by. Mr. Michael Tian, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Secretary, the residential care home industry for elderly people has always faced a manpower shortage. I have been working very actively to try to address the issue. Now, concerning the special scheme to import carers, I am very much in support of that. In terms of retaining and nurturing local talents in the caring industry, it is also very important. Now, the qualification frameworks ladder comprised of 3 levels only. That is levels 2, 3, and 4. Now, for carers, they are at level 2. For health care workers, they are at level 3. For local talents, there is not much promotion opportunities, and it is very hard to retain them. Now, last July, writing on the restructuring of the government, I suggested adding a new qualification framework level 4, that is senior health worker. Now, with sufficient training, they can take up the tasks undertaken by nurses. In the long run, it would alleviate the stress and workload on nurses, and more young people will be attracted to join the trade. Now, will the administration answer me whether you would enrich the career pathways and the promotion ladder for the industry? It has been troubling the trade for many years. Thank you, Secretary, Chair. Mr. Tian has pointed out the crux of the issue. Now, it seems that many young people locally would opt for healthcare worker because it would come with a more attractive remuneration package and higher qualification. So we have promised to review the qualification framework for the trade. Now, for healthcare worker, there is only one level for them, and there is not much promotion opportunity. So we would explore Mr. Michael Tian's suggestion to create a senior grade for the trade, and they can take up some duties performed by nurses, like giving injections and so on. In terms of resources review, we notice many healthcare workers, especially middle-aged healthcare workers with higher qualification, would like to have more opportunities. So we are now trying to explore whether we can allow people with lower academic qualification to enter the trade as well. So does it mean that QF4 for the elderly care trade, will you add this level? Well, we will review the option. Like Mr. Michael Tian said, there are levels 2, 3, and 4. It is directly related to pay. Now, people stop at level 3 in the trade, and there is no more promotion opportunities. Well, we will review that. Well, I hope you do. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, Chair. I think we would all agree with importing more care workers. That is the practical direction. My question for the Secretary is, in terms of care workers to be imported, will there be specific technical requirements? Say, for example, whether they have to complete certain training courses. Well, not necessarily academic qualifications, but qualifications in terms of skills. And also, what about the language they use? Paragraph 3, the navigation scheme for young persons in care services. How many candidates have completed the course, and how many people are enrolled in the scheme right now? And how many graduates join the trade after completing the scheme? And how long would they stay in the trade? I ask these questions because I want to assess the efficiency of the scheme. Well, if there is an attrition in the trade and young people don't want to join the trade, is it because of the remuneration or is it because of the working condition? We have a shortage in terms of care workers. So have you also considered the application of innovation technology in your assessment as well? Secretary, thank you. We don't have any requirements in terms of techniques of these carers, imported carers. The same applies for local carers. In terms of I&T, we have the fund for applying I&T in care services. It is a $10 billion fund. It is now opened for application by both public and private RCH as well. Ms. Polly Kwok. Thank you, Chair. No matter they are imported or local care workers, the basic requirement is primary education level and also proficiency in oral and written Chinese. It is very important to be able to communicate with the residents in RCH. And of course, it would be even better if they are experienced. So these are just very basic requirements. In terms of application of I&T, the Gerontechnology and Rehabilitation Fund is open for application by both subvented and private RCHEs. With the fund, there is support for RCHs which have been more reluctant to embrace technology, say for example, drug dispensary system and also companion boards. We have a list of items available for application under the fund. It helps to alleviate manpower shortage to a certain degree. Still, there are tasks which need to be undertaken by humans, say for example, help in bathing, feeding, etc. What about the navigation scheme for young persons in care services? Now, the navigation scheme, over the first 5 years, 1,158 students have enrolled, with some 600 graduated. Among them, 580 have completed the 2-year part-time diploma course. There are still 300 students working in social welfare service units. We have conducted a survey. Some of them have been staying in their positions, and some of them have enrolled in top-up degrees, say for example, nurse degree programs or healthcare degree programs. So some have pursued further studies and some have switched to other fields. Mr. Kingsley Wong. Thank you, Chair. Now, this is a very promising industry. I mean, the care industry. Our population is aging. And for some other trades, robots are taking over. But we need more young people in the trade. And also, it gives upward mobility for young people, and they can strive for better quality of life if they work hard in the trade. According to the paper, the major reasons why the trade has manpower shortage is because of the low pay. Some graduates of the navigation scheme chose to switch job. Now for care workers, and they need to work 10 to 12 hours per day, and the median income per month is just $14,000. So like Mr. Peter Shields said just now, if you can't hire enough workers, you only need to raise the pay. Now, the government said you would use the $20,000 to try to attract local talents to join the trade. Failing that, you can import more overseas laborers. So I want to ask whether the $14,000, the 141, the $1,410 per day is a sufficient level. And also, the Labor Advisory Board, and also two-thirds of the private RCH have imported less than 10 workers under the special scheme. But it seems that the enhanced special scheme is bypassing the supervisory role taken by the Labor Advisory Board. So many workers are worried that some RCH would abuse the new mechanism because there is no more oversight. Thank you, Mr. Kingsley Wong, for your question. First, on the issue of wage. Well, the administration cannot simply set a reasonable salary level. Now, the median level is $14,150 per month. We understand that for some care workers, they may be earning higher. They would earn higher if they work in subvented or board place schemes, RCH. I've met with Mr. Kingsley Wong in private, and we have met with frontline care workers. They would like to have more upward mobilities. The way they achieve that now is to move to subvented RCHs. That's why we are adjusting the ratio for the subvented RCH to 2:1. We want to ensure that in the future, even for people with lower academic qualifications can become healthcare workers with higher pay, and they can have a better sense of gain, and they can enjoy better job fulfillment. On the Labor Advisory Board issue, we respect the LAB. However, there is a long-standing serious manpower shortage in the care industry. We don't have to prove it anymore. Now, for the mechanism under the LAB, you have to prove on every application that there is a manpower shortage. We want to skip this step. We will consult the LAB, but we will not consult the LAB on each and every case.
Next, Dr. Hon NGAN Man-yu. Before member speaks, the meeting on welfare services is independent from the joint panel we just had. So, if there is any member on the panel on welfare services absent, if you can make it, please come to the meeting. Dr. Hon NGAN Man-yu. Thank you, Chairman. The shortage of care workers in the RCH has been around. I'm concerned about the speed. 5,800 applications have been approved. Some applications were made early in the morning and were then approved in the afternoon. In Q2, which was also announced by the government in December, does it mean that the top talent pass scheme can be approved faster, whereas ours cannot? What is the approval time for our scheme? Can it be approved on the same day, just like the Top Talent Pass scheme? Thank you, Dr. Han Man-yu. I believe you all understand. For some specific realms, such as some, well, like the Top Talent Pass schemes, for those involving grassroots workers being imported, the community has greater concerns. So, for jobs at the grassroots levels, we need to tread very cautiously. We need to make sure this is a step we will take only when we cannot find such workers locally. We need to heed the views from the local labor force so that we will be able to formulate policies in a fair and reasonable manner. The difference in time has to do with the different natures of different work. We hope that we can devise a harmonious method to iron out the problems in relation to the approval speed of the Top Talent Pass schemes. At least 5 months, as we need to pass through 6 meetings. For the special scheme in question, we expect that we will be able to approve them in 2 months. We need to review the application, though. We still need to review them. We think that we can help the industry and we can help them solve the problem of a manpower crunch. Thank you, Secretary. Can we still compress the timeline of 2 months? We all know that there is a manpower crunch in the RCH. We have a consensus. We all know that there is a serious paucity of care workers in RCH. So, against this background, can we ask the government to further compress the timeline? As Secretary said, we all know that there is a serious shortage of manpower. In light of this, can we still compress the timeline? Thank you, Dr. An. We will do our level best. There is still an established mechanism. We need to hold a local recruitment cell. In the past, one needed to go through the Labor Advisory Board before an application can be made. Now we have already streamlined the process. As long as the Director of Social Welfare sees fit, this can already be taken forward. So without compromising the quality, we will do our level best. Next, Dr. Taek Chi-yun. Excuse me, Mr. Michael Lok. Thank you, Chair. The FTU has great reservation about the special scheme to import care workers for residential care homes. For the special scheme of the government, owing to special needs, discretion was granted. You found it acceptable, so you wanted to carry it forward. We do not have an epidemic right now. Why do you still want to carry it forward? Residential care homes which were not approved to bring in foreign labor, you are now going to approve this. But I think that the crux of the matter is that you do not have enough training for private residential care homes. 14,000, this still appeals to workers. So, with the current pay of 18,000 to 19,000, why cannot you recruit talents? Care workers with a higher pay will go to subvented residential care homes or government residential care homes. This will form yet a new ecosystem. Of course, I understand that subsidized residential care homes are NGOs, so they do not have any motive to exploit foreign labor to reduce the cost. I know that they do not have such a motive, but I think that they have not done suitable or appropriate training. But then the government, anyway, just gives them the green light. the upward mobility will just be prevented by the government. Whether we will have a salary guarantee mechanism. If you still cannot recruit people, then we may find it anyway. We probably need to import foreign labor. So next, do we still have a mechanism to prevent labor being exploited? There is unpaid overtime. There are fees deducted. How can you make sure that these will not happen? How do you eradicate all these? Is there any recognized agency for the government, well, to act as a gatekeeper for the government? More inspections will also be needed to prevent such matters. Thank you, Mr. Look. I do not quite agree that subsidized subvented RCH did not do their utmost to recruit workers. The long-term lack of care workers has been a perennial problem. We have time and again discussed with them. The problem, however, still exists, and it does exist. All the RCH have been doing their level best. They have been bending over their backwards to recruit people. And I think we cannot do them justice. How can we have a guaranteed salaried level? It is difficult for us to have administrative interference to impose a wage level. Some are subvented RCH, some are not. So I reckon that we should give the market some space for adjustment. We should give it some room for adjustment so that we will be able to give health workers or carers some upward mobility. As for any deduction of wages for foreign labor, or there is any substandard practice not meeting the requirement of the government, if there is any complaint, you can file the complaint with the Labor Department. This is a serious situation. If applicant is found to not comply with the rules and regulations, we can simply not approve the regulations. It is important that we have to make sure that they are complying with the regulations. After the meeting, I will discuss with Mr. Lok. This is a serious issue. We have to act as a gatekeeper. As for agency, they have to obtain a license. As for intermediaries, in mainland, they have to comply with the regulations in mainland. Next, Mr. Tachi Yun. The lack of health workers has been a long-standing problem in society. And we have been working very hard on this. I see that the administration is dedicated to solving this problem, and I think they deserve applaud. People generally lack interest in this industry. No one is applying to be a health worker. And I think that the importation of foreign labor is just a solution to the pressing need of the community. Localization is a more ideal solution. The training of locals is actually easy. There is a lack of confidence, and I think that we should make it professional. It is just a platitude that it is difficult to compete with the healthcare system for nurses. And for navigation scheme for young persons in care services, it is just a short term, and we need to localize this industry, and we need to make health worker a professional. Well, we need to make it a profession. How do we retain nurses? How do we retain talents? We need to work out how we can accomplish all these. We need to take stock of the situation. We need to heed the views from the trades as well. Can the Secretary let us know the schedule for the review? Can you buy time so that a review will be available earlier? In relation to the mechanism to review the situation in RCH and the qualification framework, we hope that we will be able to start the work in the middle of this year. It is expected that it will continue into the next year because of the wide spectrum of topics we need to discuss with the industry. We hope that we will be able to come up with a long-term solution to the problem in the long run. We hope that we will be able to have a secure supply of health workers. And we can also see how we can better leverage on our manpower. Thank you. Dr. Dick, you should control the time better. Well, all of us actually understand the background very well. Probably the recommendations will only be made available next year, and it has to dovetail with the policy address as well as the budget. I am concerned that the situation will not be improved until 2 years later. Can we put in place some of the measures next year? Secretary, we will do our level best to expedite our work. We will move fast. Thank you, Mr. Chao Shu-chung. The recruitment difficulty and the manpower crunch in residential care homes has been around for so long. Private RCHs are an oppressive industry and the salary is low. But then subvented RCH will not have any difficulty recruiting people with the working hours. I cannot think of any reason that those working in private RCH will not be willing to go to subvented RCH. There is shorter working hour, higher pay, lighter workload. Why would they not want to go to private RCHs? Why would they not be headhunted? I especially agree with relaxing the regulations for the importation of foreign labor as for subvented RCHs. Papers also show that there is 17.6% vacancy rate, which means that for every 5 locals, it is enough for you to take on 1 worker. But unfortunately, though, the ratio right now is 2 to 1. So the foreign labor will actually drive away local workers. Why can you not make further adjustments? I previously suggested 5.1 to be tested for a year.
Second, recently at the AWE, the respite center has closed down. Many care workers who have been working there have sought assistance with us. I have been in contact with 20 of them. If I ask them whether they were willing to switch over to become care workers at subvented RCH with a monthly wage of $18,000 to $20,000 per month. Secretary, are you willing to help them to refer these people to work in subvented RCHs? Thirdly, when will you review the efficiency of this special scheme? And when you do so, you have to give us 2 sets of figures. First, RCH, especially subvented RCH, do we have an increase or decrease of local care workers working in them? Second, compared with the past, what is the movement? What is the trend of their salary adjustments compared with the past? Secretary? Well, under the proposal, we propose a 2-to-1 ratio for subvented and contract RCH rather than a high ratio of 5-to-1. This is because not every RCH has the need to import care workers. We just want to make sure that when they need to do so, there is sufficient room for local and imported workers to work together. So we need more than 8,500 care workers for the next 3 years, but we are not setting the quota number for imported workers that high because we want to ensure that local care workers have sufficient bargaining power. Local RCH will have to hire more care workers in the next 3 years. Elderly people and persons with disabilities need to have people to care for them. If there is a labor shortage, no matter how much money you can offer, it is of no use. And also the special scheme will last 3 years only. I think we will have a round of review by the end of the second year, and we will provide members with statistics on number of care workers hired and also the wage. Mr. Mr. Perry Chen. Thank you. My question is on the number of quota places. Now you set a cap of 7,000 at all time. The total number of imported workers cannot exceed 7,000 at all times. However, the natural attrition rate is already 10,000. So it seems that the quota cap does not match our attrition rate. And also, you said there isn't a very high qualification requirements for hiring care workers. Still, there is an insufficient supply of care workers. So if you set the cap so low, there may still be a shortage even with the special scheme. And also about the quality of the care workers and also supervision on intermediaries and agencies. I think you have to step up proactive inspections and law enforcement. There were cases where substandard care workers caused sufferings to the residents, and it is the problem of poor intermediaries. So can you take forward proactive inspection rather than just acting on complaints? This will ensure higher standard for care workers and the care industry as a whole. Thank you. We set the cap at 7,000 after taking due consideration. We understand that the demand for the next 3 years will be 8,500, but we have taken a number of considerations. We would like to offer more opportunities for local care workers through the navigation scheme and local training. We think setting the cap at 7,000 would already improve the situation a lot. Now, the licensing units under the SWD would take forward inspection at RCH, no matter they hire imported care workers or not. We will still do the job. And also, we would make sure that intermediaries are upholding labor rights. The Labor Department would take forward law enforcement in this line of work. The Labor Department would act on complaints. So when there are substandard RCH applying for imported care workers, we may reject their application because of the poor record. Mr. Champula, now about improving the quality of care workers as well as stepping up training. As it is, there is no basic training requirement, so would you consider improving the training standard? May I invite the Deputy Secretary to supplement? Thank you, Chair. On recruitment, the academic qualification is primary education and also proficiency in writing and oral Chinese and Cantonese. And it would be more preferable if the worker has experience. However, under the practical guidelines for RCHs are required to provide on-the-job training for care workers as well as health workers so that they can acquire more personal caring skills. Next, Ms. Judy Chan. Thank you, Chair. The elderly care industry has a long-standing manpower shortage. So in principle, we all support the special scheme to import care workers. I have some questions, though. Now, the major source of imported care workers would be the mainland. Now, we understand that the working conditions in the mainland has been improving all along. So does Hong Kong's working condition is Hong Kong's working condition attractive enough to attract mainland care workers to come over to work? And also, like another member has asked, I'm also concerned about the quality of care workers. So what is the government's role in terms of gatekeeping? About local recruitment, according to the paper, you mentioned various schemes like the navigation scheme for young persons in care services. This is to attract young people to join the trade. However, when I read the annex, it says the targeted group for this navigation scheme is middle-aged women who would like to join the domestic work industry or housework, domestic helping industry. So why is it so? Why is the navigation scheme targeting both young people and middle-aged women? Secretary. Now we have imported 4,000 care workers, and the majority of them is from the mainland. So we expect most of the additional 3,000 imported care workers would be imported from the mainland. We haven't set a restriction concerning the origins of imported care workers like other supplementary labor scheme. However, I think most of the care workers will come from the mainland because of the language and also the practical needs. According to the licensing condition, RCH have to ensure that their care workers are up to a certain standard. So there is flexibility in terms of further training and on-the-job training. In terms of the navigation scheme for young persons in care services, I would invite the Deputy Secretary to tell us more. Its main targets are young people. Now, the turnout from the navigation scheme is only a few hundred, but we are lacking thousands of workers. For these young people, when they have joined the care industry, they would pursue further education because they are still young. Some of them have become nurses, and it is not realistic to expect them to stay in the job as a care worker for a long time. And also many middle-aged women and also other people are seeking retraining and further training as the employee retraining board. So we want to attract as many people as possible into the care industry. Well, I hope you can be more targeted in terms of taking forward measures to attract female to join the care industry. Thank you. There are 4 members left, Ms. Lillian Kwok, Stanley Lee, Dr. David Lam, and myself. The meeting was scheduled to end at 1:05 p.m., I would extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, Chair. I want to commend the administration. Before announcing the plan, there has been a lot of consultation with the trade. According to the industry, they are happy with the new cap as well as the shorter approval time, and they appreciate the administration's efforts. Now, care workers and health workers, they have lower pay, relatively lower pay, but there is a huge demand for these workers. So besides importing overseas labor, I think the government should give some serious thoughts on how a better working environment as well as career path can be offered to care workers so that graduates from the navigation scheme would not change their job quickly after completing the course. But during the fight against the epidemic, many young people and many care workers have been employed in AWE and other temporary centers. So it shows that there is not a lack of manpower, but maybe the remuneration package is not attractive. And also another member said we should attract more female into the line of work. Well, I hope not just this industry. The question is whether we have sufficient support from society to help them join the labor force. Now, many women are working without pay to support their families. And also, I understand that you would give priority to local care workers. So what about support services for local care workers? Can you offer more on-the-job training opportunities for local care workers? I think the number of quota places under these schemes are insufficient. So I hope you can expand the scope of these training schemes so that we can hire more locally trained care workers and enrich the career path.
Thank you, Secretary. We will definitely accord priority to locals. We would also like to make good use of first hired and trained scheme. This is indeed good. This is a good scheme, but then we do not have enough. We need at least 1,500 in order to meet the demand. How can we allow women to join the workforce? Targeted poverty aims at maximizing community support in order to release women to join the workforce. On how we can retain graduates. This is a review, one of the aims of reviewing the qualifications framework. If a young person graduates from the navigation scheme soon enough, the young person will improve and will want to change to another field. So how can we make sure that the young person will see the health worker as long-term career path? If there is no upward mobility, for example, from a care worker to a health worker, then there is no further growth. We need to see whether there is any room for promotion for health workers, so that young people will see health workers as lifelong career. Next, Mr. Stanley Lee. Thank you, Chair. We need to compliment the administration for identifying the pressing problem and to address the problem. Members have been voicing concerns over the need to import care workers. The administration needs to identify the crux of the matter instead of addressing the pressing problem, that is the importation of care workers. And of course, care workers need to go through training And we also advocate carers. There is career planning. So the carer, after caring for one, can still, through government training, become a health worker. Can we address the root cause of the problem with this? Members' concerns are actually worth attention. In the long run, the importation of care workers is not ideal, so I'd like to know how the administration will improve. Especially some RCH still adopt old management method. Coupled with the low application rate of gerontechnology, can the administration work on this so that the sole importation of care workers to plug the gap will not be only solution to the problem? Thank you, Stanley Lee. Indeed, we need to address the pressing problem. That is why we have a special scheme which only lasts for 3 years, after which we will have to take stock of the situation. In the long run, how can we secure a stable supply? In my opinion, health workers should be able to have a secure supply. But then care workers might not be the same. Hong Kong people are not willing to be a care worker. And with figures 3 years later, we will come back to give you an account. I understand that Mr. Stanley Lee has particularly attention to care workers, and I will discuss in detail with Mr. Stanley Lee. On the management of RCH and the application of gerontechnology, we will also review all these matters. There is gerontechnology fund. Despite restrictions, we should also make good use of gerontechnologies to improve the well-being of senior citizens. I do not want to see the administration relying on the special scheme to plug the gap of the manpower crunch. The administration should discuss with the trade to see how recruitment can be better managed. Anything else to add, Secretary? No. Next, Dr. David Lam. Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Secretary. Well, I agree that we might find it difficult to retain the talents after 3 years unless you can give them a rosy future. When they have a rosy future, they will consider staying in this field. As the Secretary said, from a care worker to a health worker, that is already a dead end, and you are now providing a new route for them to become an enrolled nurse and then a registered nurse. Then this will provide them with a springboard for them to move upward. Otherwise, they cannot be retained. We need to give young people room for development in terms of the care worker industry. I believe that we will adopt a dual-track system. It is very important. Quite a lot of tasks are oppressive, and the use of gerontechnology can target the labor force to help people working in this field. They can lighten the workload. They can also prevent injury. When clearing excrements, gerontechnology can also improve the working conditions so that they will be less oppressive. With the future being more rosy, we can attract talents and we can retain talents. Thank you, Dr. David Lam, for your opinions. For the qualifications framework and the upward mobility of health workers and care workers, because of different reasons, they will leave this field. We hope that with the work implemented, this will provide them with a secure supply of workers. I myself will be the last one, secretary. I have been a representative for 6 years on the Labor Advisory Board LAB. I have been a representative from the staff side, and I think that this has been very effective. So for this special scheme, to be under the purview of the LWB instead of from the Labor Department, I express regret. With it under the purview of the Labor Advisory Board, there were also cases in relation to their benefits being deducted, being exploited. Some cases even had to go to the court. Some cases were ruled against. Mr. Michael Look mentioned the transaction of salaries, but then the ATM card has to be kept by the employer, and the salaries will be deducted by the employer. In relation to work hours, it is said to be 10 hours, but then it goes beyond 10 hours. It even reaches 14, 15, or 16. Somebody probably had to sleep over in the RCH. This is not unheard of. Residential care home A, for example, applied for 5 imported workers. But with this being condoned, private RCHs they know that the SWD is coming to carry out inspection, then they will go to the RCH for the tally to be taken. I am not worried that some vented RCHs do not have the motive, but then for private RCHs, they do have the headcount, they do have the manpower. They come to Hong Kong not just to file complaints, they come to actually make money. So they have no choice. They will just stay silent. Do we have better policies to prevent the exploitation of wages or benefits? If some RCHs buy places and for illegal practice, will you identify these RCH with the Consumer Council? Will they make public? Do you have better methods, more potent methods to prevent such loopholes? As a lot of workers said, it is only with complaints that some cases of exploitation were brought to light. Any reply from the administration? On the Labor Advisory Board, we think that we did not bypass the Labor Advisory Board LAB because of the long-term lack of care workers. We proposed this special scheme, and we have already taken the views from the LAB on board. Regarding how we can allay the concerns over exploitation. In the supplementary labor scheme, we are very well experienced. The Labor Department carried out inspections. We worked together with trade unions, but then there are several aspects if we want to fare well in this task. When RCH is found to have breached a regulation, we will stop the importation. We will not allow the RCH concern to import workers. But then for a Bob Play scheme, that is another story. When they have met the standard and if they are willing to do so, if Bob Play scheme is not allowed, not only the RCH but also senior citizens are penalized, so to speak. The service standard, well, there is a standard required in relation to service standard. But I agree that we need to enhance our gatekeeping function. You have to understand that imported labor, they do have concerns as well. If they are wronged, if they feel aggrieved, it is difficult for us to deal with the issues if they do not come to us with the quota of 7,000. If such issues are identified, please inform the Labor Department right away. We will perform our gatekeeping function well. Can you undertake that you will allow trade unions to go to the relevant RCH to promote? Will you allow us to go to RCH to promote to imported labor? Well, actually, when foreign labor, well, simply put, will you allow the trade unions to directly contact foreign labor, well, import labor to promote? Well, basically, you can get in touch with every single person. When import labor come to Hong Kong, they are protected by different labor laws in Hong Kong. They also have freedom in Hong Kong. But Secretary, you are not directly answering my question. That is the decision of the trade union, but then you have to require the RCH to open a door. If we knock on the door, we will not be allowed to enter the RCH. We think that you can discuss with Labor Department to see how you can perform your role. Our request is that we will be able to directly contact, to touch base with the imported labor, as long as you do not breach the labor law. We are willing to dovetail with any of your efforts if we can help the foreign labor. That is the end of the agenda item. Thank you, Administration, for attending the meeting. Agenda item number 5, AOB. Any other business to be discussed? Without any AOB, meeting adjourned.